2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, I received a hysterical call from my wife claiming to be involved in a car accident and bleeding. At that moment, I was engrossed in a critical client presentation with 12 executives, 8 months of labor, and everything at stake. Her voice, trembling with fear, said, "Daniel, I need you, please, I'm scared." In response, I instructed her to call 911 and proceeded with my presentation before heading to the accident site after a 90-minute delay. Upon arrival, there was no sign of an accident, no ambulance, no police report, only my wife Colette sitting in a coffee shop parking lot, crossed arms, anger evident in her eyes. "You failed," she said coldly. "I needed you and you chose work that speaks volumes." As I continued to shake from adrenaline, she displayed an article on her phone by relationship experts suggesting such tests expose true priorities. "And now I know where I stand," she stated. The ride home was quiet. Throughout the journey, she constantly vented about emotional accessibility, partnerships, and how her friend Becca's husband abandoned everything upon her identical action. I responded automatically, though my thoughts were preoccupied elsewhere. 3 months ago, I stumbled upon a credit card bill that Colette had inadvertently left in the printer. It listed hotel expenses in another city, places we hadn't visited together. When I questioned it, she explained it was for work seminars, then grew defensive when I questioned her about it. I chose to let it pass then, suppressing the uneasy sensation within me. But that manufactured emergency wasn't a test of our relationship. It was a manipulation strategy. And I came to understand with icy certainty that I needed to begin documenting everything. The night of the staged accident, I transferred $17,000 from our shared savings into an account Colette wasn't aware of, an inheritance left by my grandfather that I'd kept separate as per his wishes. During our consultation with divorce attorney Gregory Chen, recommended by my college roommate, he advised, "Avoid confronting her at this point. If she is involved in an affair, we require evidence before she can hide assets or construct a narrative. Texas being a community property state, infidelity may impact spousal support and asset division if we demonstrate financial misconduct. Evidence could include hotel receipts, messages, photos, witness testimony, and a consistent pattern of deception suggesting intent to deceive. I'm unsure if she possesses a separate phone. If so, she is either cautious or using apps that erase messages. Hence, we might need to hire a private investigator." The following day, I engaged Ramona Gutierrez, an experienced former FBI agent known for her steely tenacity. In her office, she outlined 3 requirements: my wife's daily schedule, access to phone records via our joint account, and authorization to monitor her movements for 2 weeks. "What's the total price for a 2-week investigation along with expenses?" "It's $1,000, but let me be candid. Around 80% of my infidelity cases are verified within the first week if there is any evidence to find. I'll uncover it quickly. I sold a stock portfolio my father had given me on my 30th birthday to finance this truth-seeking endeavor. Colette has always resented that gift, claiming it was typical of our family to give money instead of love. Now it appears to be buying me the truth, as her behavior shifted after the staged emergency. She became more amiable and apologetic, preparing my favorite meals, suggesting a vacation, inquiring about my work with what seemed like genuine interest. "I've been reflecting on what transpired," she said one night, cuddled next to me on the couch. "I reacted improperly. I was merely frightened that you were drifting away from me." "Afraid of what?" "That we would transform into roommates instead of partners, that you'd suddenly realize you had surpassed me." Her voice broke perfectly timed. She leaned against my shoulder in a familiar gesture from our past dating days. Yet I hesitated to believe it as my phone buzzed with a text from Ramona. The subject line pointed to room 347 at Riverside Hotel at 11:52 a.m. A male, identified later as Troy Westfield, had arrived separately at 12:04 p.m. and would monitor the situation. I kissed the top of Colette's head in response. "I'm not leaving," I replied, to which she clutched my hand tightly. 6 days after the incident, Ramona delivered a detailed report via encrypted email. The 16-page document contained timestamps, photos, and license plate records. Troy Westfield was the name of Colette's senior office analyst, divorced at 41. They had been meeting twice a week for 4 months at 3 different hotels, always on weekday afternoons, for periods ranging from 2 to 3 hours. However, the heartbreaking revelation came from the evidence regarding an apartment where they had also been meeting. 5 months ago, Troy leased a 1-bedroom condo, situated 8 miles from our house, through a property management company contact of Ramona's. The lease application, signed by my wife, listed Colette Thorne as a co-tenant. Unbeknownst to me, she had used funds from our joint account, disguised as professional development course fees, to pay the initial and last month's rent, totaling $6,200. When I inquired about this withdrawal, it became clear she was not just having an affair, but also creating a plan to leave. As I sat in my car outside a gas station, reading the report on my phone, a chill ran through me. It wasn't heartbreak that would follow later. It was a chilling realization that she had manipulated me with a phony emergency to make me appear as the negligent spouse, driving her into another man's arms. She was weaving a tale, and I needed to gather evidence. I made an appointment with Gregory for 8 on the following morning. You pushed the printed report toward him, and he read it wordlessly for 6 minutes without altering his expression. Afterward, he commended me, pointing out that the lease agreement was detrimental, demonstrating premeditation and financial misconduct. In Texas, we can argue she squandered community assets on an affair impacting property division. What's our next move? We file, but first we must gather financial records. Does she have access to unmonitored accounts? Yes, we have joint checking, savings, and individual retirement accounts. I manage the investments. Make sure to check your retirement account beneficiaries today. People planning departures sometimes make covert changes that spouses might overlook. I instantly accessed my 401k on my phone within his office, discovering that the beneficiary had been altered 3 weeks ago. Previously, it was Colette Thorne at 100%, but now it reads Colette Thorne at 50% and Troy Westfield at 50%. My hands grew numb. She added her boyfriend as a beneficiary to my retirement account. How is this feasible? Gregory's jaw stiffened. It shouldn't be. Such action demands your signature or a falsified authorization. Send me that evidence right away. This isn't merely adultery, it's fraud. The forgery was intricate. Someone had duplicated my signature from various documents, even mimicking the specific way I formed the D in Daniel and the slight upward slope on the E. The form was electronically submitted with an IP address tracing back to Colette's office building. This escalates everything, Gregory stated during our urgent afternoon meeting. Financial fraud within marriage impacts criminal liability, not just divorce proceedings. We need to determine if you wish to press charges, will it aid in the divorce? It will ruin her case, but Daniel, if you choose this path, you're not merely ending your marriage. You might be sending your wife to prison. I recalled the staged emergency, the meticulous display of affection afterward, the lease she'd signed with money she'd embezzled from our joint account, the beneficiary change that would have paid her a fair share if I had passed away. File everything, I said, both civil and criminal suits. I continued pretending to be the devoted husband. Colette remained oblivious about Troy, about the apartment, about the forgery. She chatted about her day over dinner. She planned a weekend trip to wine country. She mentioned possibly trying for kids next year. Every word served as fuel for the fire I was carefully constructing. Ramona continued surveillance, documenting every hotel visit, every afternoon at the secret apartment. Gregory's paralegal subpoenaed phone records, financial statements, and employment correspondence. We constructed a timeline that showed Colette and Troy's relationship had begun 8 months ago, 2 months before she started withdrawing money from our accounts for fake courses and work expenses. She embezzled $14,000 in total, all of it directly linked to the affair. The apartment lease, hotel rooms, dinners at expensive restaurants I'd never attended. A weekend trip to Scottsdale she had claimed was a girl's retreat. The staged emergency happened during week 3 of my evidence gathering. In retrospect, I believe she was growing anxious. Perhaps Troy was pressuring her to leave. Maybe she needed to hasten her narrative that I was a poor husband. She wanted me to fail that test so desperately, to abandon my presentation, rush to her side and prove I prioritized work over her. Then she could justify everything to our friends, her family, eventually to a judge. But I had passed a different test. The one where I didn't react emotionally, where I documented everything, where I built an indisputable case while she thought she was constructing a story. Gregory filed for divorce on a Thursday morning, simultaneously submitting a fraud report to the county prosecutor and freezing our joint accounts with an emergency court order. Colette was served papers at her office at 10:17 a.m. She called me 37 times in 2 hours. I didn't answer. She returned home at 6 p.m., her face blotchy from crying, and found me sitting at the kitchen table with printed copies of Ramona's surveillance photos spread out like a crime scene. Daniel, please let me explain. Explain the forgery or explain Troy, her face drained white. What forgery? You pushed the beneficiary form towards me, allegedly adding your boyfriend to my retirement account with a falsified signature. This act constitutes a felony. I never imagined you would do such a thing. Your hands trembled, implying this was perhaps an error. However, the IP address traces back to your office, and the signature analysis confirms it's a forgery, imitating my handwriting. Moreover, the date aligns with when you claim to be working late on the Simmons project, yet there seems to be no such project in existence. As you grasped the edge of the table, I realized you had been investigating me. You orchestrated a fake emergency to assess my reaction. The objective was to verify whether my suspicions about your affair were correct. In response, I conducted tests of my own. Mine, however, had tangible evidence. 3 weeks later, the temporary orders hearing took place. It was held in a small courtroom with only Judge Patricia Keown, our attorneys, and a court reporter present. First, Gregory presented the surveillance documentation, hotel receipts bearing both our names, keycard records from the apartment building indicating Colette's access on days she claimed to be working late or at yoga. Following this, he presented financial evidence, $14,000 in fraudulent withdrawals, each meticulously documented with her fabricated explanations in saved text messages. Then came the evidence of beneficiary fraud, the signature analysis from a forensic handwriting expert, the IP trace, and the timeline showing she had submitted it on the same day she met Troy at the apartment for 3 hours. Colette's attorney, a man named Brennan, looked increasingly unwell as the hearing progressed. He argued that the affair was a personal matter irrelevant to asset division. Judge Keown interrupted him, stating that your client had forged legal documents and embezzled marital assets to fund an extramarital relationship. This isn't a personal matter. It's fraud, she instructed Mr. Brennan to continue. In my final exhibit, Gregory installed a voice-activated recorder in his car 2 weeks prior to filing. As Texas is a one-party consent state, he only required his own permission to record the conversations he participated in. Colette had requested to use his car the day before he filed, stating that her vehicle was making a strange noise. He agreed and allowed her to pick up Troy from a downtown parking garage. Their ensuing 34-minute conversation detailed their plan to portray him as controlling and emotionally distant, with Colette claiming financial abuse by limiting her access to funds. They decided to reveal their relationship publicly only after the divorce was finalized. However, the most incriminating part occurred at minute 27, where Troy's voice could be heard, confirming that they intended to distribute the proceeds from a shared account upon his parents if he passed away before the divorce was finalized, ensuring that Colette would receive half directly, which Troy found chilling. Colette's voice realistic, given his hazardous commute. Car crashes are a common cause of death among men of his age. I'm merely preparing myself. The courtroom fell quiet upon playback of the recording. Judge Keown took off her spectacles. Mrs. Thorne, did you falsify your husband's signature on the beneficiary amendment form? Colette's lawyer whispered frantically to her. She didn't respond. Mrs. Thorne, I require an honest answer. Did you commit fraud? My voice cracked. I was terrified he would leave me with nothing. I sought protection by adding your boyfriend to my husband's death benefits. Tears flowed freely. Judge Keown, granting every request by Gregory, awarded temporary exclusive possession of the house, froze all joint assets, issued an order barring Colette from accessing retirement accounts, and referred her for criminal fraud charges. This court doesn't tolerate parties manipulating the legal system through deceit, Judge Keown stated. Mrs. Thorne, you fabricated a story portraying your husband as negligent, while concurrently defrauding him and planning to benefit financially from his potential demise. This isn't just an affair, it's malicious collusion. The criminal charges were finalized after a 4-month delay. During this period, Colette moved in with Troy, a fact that would have complicated my case had we not already proven her guilt, the statement concluded. In just 6 weeks, their relationship disintegrated as confirmed by common acquaintances. Apparently, Troy discovered Colette's elaborate deceits and wished to distance himself from any potential legal entanglements related to her crimes. Consequently, she admitted guilt for 1 count of forgery and 1 count of theft, receiving 18 months probation, restitution of $14,000, and a requirement to perform 300 hours of community service as part of the agreement. No jail time was imposed, but her record is now permanent. The divorce was finalized 8 months after I initiated it, I retained the house, my retirement funds, and 70% of the marital assets due to Colette's fraudulent dissipation of communal property. She was left with her car and individual retirement account, which amounted to approximately $8,000. Her family severed ties with her upon learning the truth. Her father reached out to express regret, admitting he had harbored doubts about Colette's character, but opted not to intervene. A card from my mother arrived with the message, "You deserved better." Most of our shared acquaintances supported me, although some attempted neutrality until I presented them with evidence. Following this revelation, there was a hush, and 6 months post-divorce, I sold the house. It held too many recollections of Colette's acts, feigned expressions, calculated affections, and devious tests that ignited this downfall. In their place, I purchased a smaller dwelling near my workplace, took in a dog named Justice, my sister's recommendation, initially deemed overt by me, and began rebuilding. Often asked if I regret my actions, if perhaps direct confrontation or marriage counseling could have been an option, I should have given her another chance. However, the truth is she had already made her choices. The affair, the secret apartment, forged documents, manipulative tests, these were not errors but carefully planned actions. She aimed to manipulate the storyline, portraying herself as a victim of a negligent spouse who failed to appear during an emergency. I penned a contrasting narrative instead. Hers was designed to reveal my imperfections. Instead, it revealed hers. She sought to ascertain if I would put my career above her. In turn, I aimed to determine the authenticity of our marriage or its fabrication. Our questions were answered. She attempted to gauge whether I'd abandon everything for a staged accident. My goal was to see if I'd forsake everything for a genuine crisis. It transpired that I excel at self-preservation. That is the tale of how my wife's trial turned into her divorce evidence. She orchestrated a false emergency to tarnish me as an unfaithful husband. I devised a case to incriminate her. The distinction lies in the genuine risks and penalties involved in my test, whereas hers bore none. I believe she now works retail, as recent intelligence suggests. Her conviction for fraud terminated her analyst position. Businesses generally disapprove of employees with a history of forgery. I hold the title of senior director at my firm. The presentation I completed during her orchestrated accident stunt sealed our company a $12 million contract. Occasionally, I ponder on her sitting in that coffee shop parking lot, smugly convinced she had demonstrated my lack of concern. She believed she'd justified her affair, theft, and other wrongdoings. Unbeknownst to her, I was amassing evidence. The test she thought she was conducting on me was minuscule compared to the investigation I conducted on her. She aimed to uncover my priorities. Instead, I exposed her crimes. Ultimately, this revelation proved decisive.